for now, let's get to our next caller. We have Phoenix, who's calling in from Texas. Phoenix, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Oh, I just missed my chance to talk last week for the Halloween show. So, due to the technical difficulties with new equipment at the studio, but I just wanted to talk about some of the crazy experiences that I used to have back when I was a believer, a polytheist.
Yes.
Would have fit in real well with the Halloween theme.
Yeah. So Phoenix, by the way, if you missed it last week, again, go watch that episode. But we did it in studio, which we haven't done since 2020. And Phoenix was actually there, so Phoenix, good talking to you again. And if we will be doing more in studio shows, and we'll let you know when those happen. More on that in the future. But anyway, Phoenix, glad you can at least talk to us now. So yeah, what was some of the stuff that you were experiencing or believing then? Because I am curious.
Okay, I'm just going to bullet point this and go from the least extraordinary to most extraordinary out of these. So the first one would be hearing voices. Basically, I heard whispers on while I was. This is all when I was back in the military. I was in the motor pool, and I heard a voice just call out my name, and looked around, nothing. And a moment later, I hear, "Hurry up," whispered in my ear. There's nobody around me. The closest people are about 75 yards away. Get back to the motor pool, and sure enough, I'm getting yelled and screamed at for taking too long.
Now, Phoenix, I'm going to give away the game here a little bit here because I do know you in real life. So
yes.
when you say that you heard voices, so like do you think that was a sign of like mental distress there, or like what do you interpret that as? Because like that I don't know, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, honestly, all of these, my personal beliefs on what the actual explanations are would be the same for all of them.
Okay.
Considering it was taking place at about the same time period in my life.
Okay. And can I just confirm? So you're a non-believer now, though, but
correct.
at the time you were a believer, because I come from a spiritualist background. So a lot of my family were big into speaking to the dead, and I was at a very young age convinced that by my family that I was clairaudient because I could hear things, or that I thought I could hear things. So to explain it away, my family would say, "Oh, this is because you can hear dead people and pass on information." So it'll be interesting to see where you go with it.
Yeah. Well, that one was an actual audible one. At the same time period in my life, I was also seeing I had like a little cat-sized shadow that just I noticed. I was staring at it, and then suddenly it bolted away and then darted around a building, and I couldn't find it after that. And it was in a fenced-in area, so I had nowhere to go. I would also see shadowy figures that looked like they were hooded, robed, standing on top of buildings looking down at me while I was out there too. But then jumping to something even more extravagant would be the time when I went to, I had just pulled up to my parents. Oddly enough, I was stationed within driving distance of home, so I didn't have to report that. And I just pulled up to my parents' house, and as soon as I put the vehicle into park, suddenly I found myself not in my car, but kneeling on a red cushion, a blood red cushion on a stone floor in a dark room where I couldn't see the walls or ceiling because it was so dark. And there were two cups made out of bone in front of me, one filled with blood, one filled with ash. And I had dipped my thumb into the ash, dabbed out on my eyelids, dipped my fingers into the blood, and ended up and drew lines down over my eyes and cheeks and across my nose. And as soon as I finished doing that, suddenly I found myself back in my car again with my hand up exactly where it was in the ritual. And I was like, what the hell just happened? It was just as vivid as if I was physically there.
Now,
but was there
you-
anything on your eyes when after you? Was there
Nope.
anything there?
Nope.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no. It was just like suddenly I was there and then I wasn't.
Right.
But the most the craziest one though was I was this was a very stressful time in my life, and I'll get into what was going on here in just a moment. But the most extravagant one was I was having a dream. I was talking to my higher self, or my spirit guide, or whatever name you want to give it.
Mm-hmm.
And it told me, you got to fix the situation or I will. And that's when I woke up, convulsing from the waist up, with my mouth filled with blood.
Oh no.
Wow.
Phoenix,
Yeah.
this sounds like something more serious than just, I don't know, a dream. Like, have you had this checked out? Like, honestly, like, what has anything come of that? Because
yeah.
Okay, so now we get into the explanations for what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so this was an extraordinarily stressful period of my life. I was exploring my spirituality. I believed myself to be a vampire and otherkin at the time.
Yeah, dude, otherkin. It's been a minute since I've talked about otherkin, dude. Like, that's like 2014 Tumblr era shit, man. I love that. I love that, dude. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
And me being in the Army, I was not medicated at the time, but I do have ADHD, and I was at the time undiagnosed, but I'm also autistic. And so that social environment was extremely stressful for me, enough to that I was actually shaking on a regular basis. So I was under an extreme amount of stress. I was also malnourished because the officers there had not gotten me the meal card to eat at the cafeteria. And that kept up all the way up till 2 weeks before I actually got out of the Army.
Right.
So I had to buy my own food, but then my roommate would steal it as soon as I brought it home. So fast food was all I could, dollar menu was all I could afford to eat on a regular basis, given that so I was significantly malnourished, pretty much.
Yeah.
Stressed out, malnourished. I was also dealing with sleep deprivation.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You had everything.
That's a lot.
Because I kept on going back to my parents' house to de-stress. And of
Now,
course,
see how much extra context we need just to figure out exactly what's going on there, right? Like, see how anecdotal stories can be just totally misconstrued into something like and Phoenix, I know, like, you are a from, I know you in real life, you've come to the ACA library you volunteer with the ACA, and you've done a lot of stuff. So, like, you've told me you've wanted to talk about this for a long time and call in, which I'm really happy you did. But it's like, look, I can vouch for you in that, like, you don't need to have any extra expression of something mental going on or anything. You can just be external circumstances that can really just fuck with you. But also, when you're exploring a very open belief system, like that happens with New Age philosophy and to some extent polytheism, like, that can also influence the way you interpret your events, and that can
and
really
also
change
family
things.
and the people around you who also believe these things. You don't necessarily have to believe something, but a family member can say to you, oh, it's because of what they believe, and that also, like, confirms what you've been feeling.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that crazy? I don't know. Well, I'm glad you're okay, Phoenix. I'm glad you made it out to the other side here, because man, that'd be intense, dude. I don't know. I've never gone through anything like that.
The clairaudient stuff hit me hard because I have experienced that, and our bodies are surreal things that anything can be tricked. Any one of our senses can be tricked somehow, and like high levels of stress in any situation can cause your body to do some strange things, and it's fascinating what it does, but it's terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So some of the key points of what I've learned since then that actually
Mhm.
pulled me out of it would be that let's start with all those stressors that I talked about, physical and mental alike.
Mhm.
Each one of those alone is known to be able to trigger hallucinations of any
Mhm.
variety.
Right.
Mhm.
And I learned that from reading Michael Shermer's work, and furthermore, the long isolation, doing something monotonous like driving down a road at night.
Mhm.
Is another thing that could cause hallucinations where your brain can start trying to come up with some body or something to interact with because it's getting bored.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well,
There's also driving. Is
all
it
right,
driving
to get
hypnosis where your brain, so you forget parts of the journey as well because you've done it so many
yeah,
times
you
that you just forget.
kind of
Yeah.
go into
Exactly.
autopilot. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but I'm thinking that I had just as soon as I parked, just enough stress from driving was relieved that I got relaxed enough to have that experience. So that the stress of
Mm.
actually driving was just enough to keep me out of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that,
And at the time, from what I know about you, Phoenix, too, from what you've told me about yourself, is that you, like you just said, you were doing all that stuff and interpreting what was going on as part of a ritual, as part of something grander, right? And like when you
Mhm.
do that, like you're gonna get something out of it. You're gonna get some sort of message, whether it's good or bad or neutral, whatever. Like there's gonna be a higher attribution to that. That
Right.
if you don't think about it like in a critical way, can be life changing, but not always in a good way. It could be, it
Mhm.
can lead you into something that
yeah.
just may not be true, right?
And then the practices that we actually do in those kinds of communities, the various
Mhm.
metaphysical communities, New Age communities,
Yeah.
various other religions, I've since learned that the exercises themselves, you have uh, are either meditative or hypnotic induction is actually a
Yeah.
part of it too.
Yeah.
And of
Definitely.
course, there have been multiple studies with that. And so, common things that you encounter with a meditation with the brain scans is that you have your sense of spatial awareness reduced. That's a part of the part of you that keeps
Mhm.
your awareness centered inside your body. So people leaving their body, astral projection sort of stuff, or becoming one with the world or one with God, sort of thing. That is a result of that section of the brain
Yeah.
being, that function being reduced. And then on top of that, your reality checking system is also reduced. So what normally would
Yes.
happen would be your brain goes, okay, I'm having this experience. Let me go and double check this against my past experiences and see if it
Mhm.
maps to
Yes.
that. But that
You're
part of
100% right.
that function in your brain is reduced, and so you're starting to have these experiences in an altered brain state that your brain is now accepting as factual right off the
Right.
bat.
Right.
And then that gets put into the bank of experiences it checks against later, so that when it
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
functioning correctly, it's going up, it's looking at false data
Mhm.
to go,
Right.
oh no, this is real because we've had this before. And so you
Yeah.
end up building up that background. And then you have the common practice of visualizing so vividly that, the common exercise would be you have an apple in your hand. And there's an apple in your hand. And the idea is to get to the point where you can't differentiate between the imagined apple and an actual apple.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
People actually,
Yeah.
they lord that over. This I've actually able to
Phoenix,
do it. Yeah.
there's a lot of
So you
like
combine all that together.
yeah, there's
And
interesting scholarship on interpretations of mystical experiences, right? It's very interesting when we talk about, I mean, you talk about brain states. People with like, who suffer seizures in the temporal lobe can also experience the same things that people have done under like these mystical conditions, right? Like you can really look at different areas of the brain and see like which areas are lighting up when you're experiencing certain things and figure out exactly what you're talking about. These fact checking parts of the brain may be
Mhm.
off during certain sets, and it makes you do and experience these
yep,
weird and crazy things which people interpret as the divine, right? And I think that's like the
oh
heart
yeah,
of a lot of religion right there, which is a very sobering thought. it's just like, oh, we've just been tricking ourselves with
And
our
also,
brains. But
when you've had these experiences as well, because you can't necessarily explain them away, you start searching for them to happen again. So your brain's already locked on to going, I need this to happen again so that I can then prove that it actually happened the first time. And then you're finding biases and things. So yeah, the brain's a fascinating thing.
It's true. But Phoenix, we're gonna go ahead and let you go. Thanks so much for calling in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really glad you finally got called in, because we've been talking for a long time, and like you've been telling me for a long time you wanted to call into the show. So I'm glad we got to do that for you today. But thank you, Phoenix, and thank you for being a volunteer and doing what you do. Phoenix is a cool guy.